At this point, I'm pretty excited about our work with digital learning and our BYOD pilot. As with any major change in teaching, there's an implementation dip that we have to get through before we begin to see any benefits. As it's been my role to recognize emerging challenges and to support classroom teachers as they encounter them, I'll spend some time describing the challenges that we've encountered thus far. The first challenge we encountered was getting the right equipment in place. The installation of a wireless access point took only 3 weeks to have in place after making the request, but devices to provide those students who do not have access to one didn't arrive until a month after. That created some frustration on the part of teachers involved and also on the part of some students because it's difficult to plan activities and to carry out activities in the classroom that rely on the use of devices when many students don't have them. To address the concern temporarily, we decided to place students in groups so that they had shared access to devices, and that worked for the short term. The second major challenge we encountered was finding a common ground with students for appropriate use of their devices during class time. At first, it was taking a lot of time and effort to police who was using their devices inappropriately and at the wrong times. So we decided, instead of fighting that battle, that we would develop a courtesy policy with the students that would govern the use of the devices during class time. Once we sat down and spoke with the students and came up with a strategy and a list of appropriate courtesy policies, once we developed that, all the students signed the document and it was posted in the classroom. And that clarification helped to cut down significantly on issues of device use at inappropriate times. The third challenge we encountered was working with the assumption that students are capable in their use of technology and that they know how to use it in meaningful ways. It became evident this just simply isn't the case when we began teaching students how to use the various Web 2.0 tools. Something as simple as creating a Posters account and making a post to that account was very difficult for some. Another example of the steep learning curve was moving our classroom to an online platform called My Big Campus, which is a learning management software, and that's designed to allow teachers to post assignments and for students to turn them in online. At first, students were very excited to adopt the technology because the platform looks and behaves much like a Facebook environment, but many had problems in the beginning submitting assignments and posting to discussion threads, and it took a fair amount of training on the part of me and the classroom teachers to get students to the point where they were comfortable doing so. Another challenge we encountered was when we introduced students to the idea of a back channel. We set up a room on today's meet and gave students access to post as they read in groups. The idea was that students would post questions and items of importance for discussion after the designated reading time. The first try, students' responses were few and vague. That night we also had a student vandalize the room with inappropriate comments. And after meeting with the students to discuss the implications of this posting, it was clear that the students now understood the importance of how we represent our classroom online. We also spent time clarifying what a good response looked like, and we gave groups a minimum number of responses expected. The next reading session went much more smoothly, and the discussion that ensued was relevant, focused, and on topic. A final challenge we've faced has been that we're transitioning between two different teachers for the purposes of this pilot. We started with Ms. Kopetsky teaching the class, and just as she began to feel comfortable with the use of some technologies, Mr. Broadhurst took over as teacher candidate. Both teachers have been very open to learning and experimenting with technology in the classroom, but neither has really had the opportunity yet for long-term sustained exposure to teaching with devices in the classroom. A good example of this is that Mr. Broadhurst made a change to his teaching method by putting students into self-directed groups instead of lecture-style instruction. And while he may see some benefit to this by the end of his practicum, he may not get to see what the long-term effects of inquiry-based methods are for student learning. Students have already begun to post their individual work online for Mr. Broadhurst to assess, but this coming week, students will be posting their group work to a poster space, and we'll get to see the results of their learning. And I believe that this might be the time when we finally begin to see the benefits of digital learning, and maybe this week, when we start seeing those things, we'll emerge from this implementation dip.